Me, I lost my mom when I was 11, so that's like maybe 19 years ago. Um, yeah, it's been that long, and so the grief process for me was very different with that, and I've lost other things as time passed as well. But whatever you've lost, I'm hoping that today's live will be able to provide enough information for you guys to know where to start with the process and to know where you are in your grieving process, to know if you're grieving at all or what it is that you need to do overall to just basically learn how to grieve and how to deal with it. So I'm just going to start with a quick definition. So grief doesn't necessarily have to do with losing someone. It could be the loss of anything that is valuable to you. So it could be the loss of something that you love, maybe your favorite book, or the loss of a job, or the loss of a pet. Let's say a fish died. My fish died once, and I was pretty touched by that because I love that fish. So anything that is valuable to you, anything, it could be a loss of yourself. Sometimes when we change, we don't count that as a loss. When we change, it could be for the better, but at the same time, we're losing a piece of ourselves and we're losing a part of our personality that, helped us overall. And sometimes also in therapy, that people begin to grieve because as they begin to change and as they begin to experience or build or form a new version of themselves, then they begin to feel sad and they begin to grieve that old past version of themselves. So it's okay to feel all of those things if you have experienced a loss of anything, and it's okay to take the time to pretty much grieve. So it's the loss of something or someone that is pretty much valuable to you, and grief is one of those things that impact not only us like in a mental or psychological way, but grief impacts our whole self. Like we can struggle spiritually, we struggle mentally. It has its impacts on the body. We can get stomach aches, we can become fatigued, we can be crying a lot, and all of those things are physical symptoms. It impacts us psychologically to the point where we can begin to feel depressed and sad and deal with all of those things. So grief is one thing that impacts the whole self and the whole body. With spiritually, we begin to question God and ask why God and stuff like that. So I'm going to go through the 5 stages today, and there's so much to be said about grief, but I won't have enough time to go through all of it. But the 5 stages for today, and some of the symptoms before I get into that are you feel like you're going crazy, you can't concentrate, you're feeling sad or depressed, you feel irritable, angry, frustrated, misunderstood, you start losing interest in some things, you begin to feel tired and exhausted. These are some of the physical symptoms. You experience anxiety, nervousness, fearfulness, guilt, remorse. Hi Ruth, thanks for joining. You feel numb, you become avoidant, and some people even stop taking care of themselves. So if you're noticing some of these things, of course it could be other things. It could be depression, but the difference between depression and grief is that you would have to have experienced some type of loss recently or in the past year also for it to be categorized as grief. So the 5 stages of grief are denial, there's anger, there's bargaining, there's depression, and then acceptance. And I'm gonna just quickly go through all of them. So when you lose something or someone, you begin to be in denial. You begin to you're in shock, right? When you learn the news, you're in automatic shock. And it's hard for you at this point to even accept that this happened, or that you lost that pet, or that you lost that job, or that you lost that person that you loved, or that you lost that part of yourself or that piece of yourself, or you lost that relationship. Whatever it is, you're in shock, you're in denial, you can't accept it. And it doesn't necessarily last for any specific of time. Grief is like different for each and every person. So it's just the time when you're in denial, you're trying to wrap your mind around what happened, and your body, your mind, your whole self is trying to understand what is happening. You can't believe it, you're in shock. And then at some point you get to the phase of anger. Anger is necessary when somebody is going through grief, because anger is mostly, for most people, I don't want to say it's for everybody, for most people, anger is the easiest emotion to express for some people. So the anger comes at the time because you don't want to accept, because you don't want to accept what's happening or the loss that you're experiencing. Then you begin to feel angry at yourself, angry at other people. Sometimes your family members would get would get to see your anger. And you even, like if it's somebody that passed away, you even get angry at them. Oh, why did you leave me? Why did you kind of like just leave me in this situation all by myself? Or you left me and you no longer here. Why did you do this? Even though it doesn't make sense, even though the person didn't choose to leave or choose to die or whatever happened, sometimes it doesn't have to, death is not required for it to be a loss. So even though the person didn't make the choice to do that, then we begin to feel angry. Or maybe even angry at ourselves for not making better choices, or angry. Like the anger is absolutely normal, and it's okay for you to allow yourself to feel that, because if you don't feel it, that means you're stuffing it. And if you're stuffing it, that means it's going to come out in another form. And grief can then turn into depression. So if you're not letting the anger out and letting the emotions and the sadness and whatever it is that's coming up, you're not letting it out, then you begin to feel other things, and it can even become complicated grief. So during the angry phase is also the time where we just ask ourselves, like, why did this happen? And this can happen through all the phases. Like, why did this happen? Trying to understand as well the reason why. And then we get into the third stage, which is bargaining, where we begin to ask ourselves, like, if only I did this, if only I did this differently, or if only I didn't make that choice, or if only something different had happened, or we begin to wish, I wish this person was still around, or I wish that things didn't happen the way that they did. We begin to, if we're like Christians, we begin to pray, or if we're religious, we begin to pray and say, God, like, turn this around. And we begin to bargain with God. I'm gonna be good. Like, make this stop. Make this not happen anymore, or make this not the reality. Make it be a dream. So we begin to bargain and try to change the situation. And then at some point we get into a depression. Depression is when we've dealt with the anger and we've allowed space for that, or not allowed space for that. And then we begin to experience that deep sadness where we can't see beyond it. We can't see our lives without the person. We can't see ourselves finding another job. We can't see us getting back to that to reality, to that real place that we need to be, when we were healthy. We can't see past this specific moment because of that deep sadness and depression that we're experiencing at the moment. So it can be hard to be in the depressive phase, because you lose energy, you don't want to do anything, you isolate yourself, you're feeling really down and low, and most of the time people just cut themselves off from other people, which is not recommended. But if you do need some time to yourself, it's okay, but at some point knowing when to cut that off, and for your loved ones to know when it's been too long for them to also step in and help you get out of that phase as well. And then acceptance is the last phase. That's when things begin to feel a little bit better. Acceptance doesn't mean that you are okay with what happened. It doesn't mean that you're like all of a sudden happy that the person passed away, or you all of a sudden okay that, oh yeah, I didn't need that job anyway. That sounds like a lot like denial. But acceptance is getting to a point where you are okay with the new reality. You're okay with life without the person. You're okay with things the way that they are, and you will have somewhat of a plan or something that you will do to move yourself forward and be able to just continue living your life, right? And grief is not something that happens and you go through phases 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and then it goes away. But grief is something that is it's like it continues to happen. You could bounce from acceptance back to depression, or you could go from denial to bargaining, or back to anger. It doesn't matter how you go through the stages, as long as you continue to allow yourself to flow through them. Because losing someone that you love, like a mom for example, will hit harder than losing something less valuable like your favorite book that can be replaced. Or although you would feel the weight of both, you would, but losing someone close to you that is important in your life is not, it will hit a lot harder. And it's okay for you to allow yourself the time that you need to be able to grieve, and your grief will not look like anybody else's. But I think the point that I've been stressing so far is that although it doesn't look like anyone else's, that you allow yourself the time that you need to be able to feel the emotions and deal with it properly. And one more thing that I want to add is that, like, when you're grieving, not to be afraid to ask for help, because it's better to grieve in community. It's better to grieve with other people with you, even though they have not suffered the loss, or the loss is not as close to them. But knowing that you're not alone in your grief is very important, because it'll make you feel, it'll help you get to that bargaining, that acceptance phase a little bit quicker, and a little bit in a more efficient way. And also remember to be kind to yourself. Some people are hard on themselves, and I've had like clients that they've lost something this week, and then the next week they come, I was supposed to feel better already. I was supposed to get to that place. Why is it taking me so long? Because if they've gotten out of a relationship, for example, they're looking at the other person, and it seems like the person is ready to move, has already moved on, or the person is in that place where, yeah, they're fine, or they're already in a new relationship, and they look at that and they think of themselves, they think that, oh yeah, I should be further along in my grief, definitely should be. No, that's not the case. Like, you need to allow yourself time and be kind to yourself during this time. That if it takes you a lot longer to grieve, then that's okay, and that's the time that you need. And no one has the right to come and tell you that, oh, you should have been over this already, unless you're dealing with complicated grief and the person is noticing that you're not making any progress, and they're actually telling you the truth. And then be emotionally and mentally present, right? Sometimes when people go through a significant loss, when they're in that shock phase, they tend to just keep themselves busy. They work a lot. They spend a lot of time with other people to just avoid just being by themselves or dealing with whatever it is that is going on in their lives at the moment. So if that's you and you have a very recent loss, it's okay to take time off of work, as long as you can afford to. It's okay to take time off of work. It's okay to take time, just use some vacation days so that you can be able to have that time to yourself, to make space for all of the emotions that will come, because it's complicated. Grief is a complicated thing, and you never know how it's going to impact you. And if you're so busy just looking at everything and not paying attention to what's going on internally with you, it's going to be very difficult for you to just be able to know what you need, provide that for yourself so you can be able to move forward. And also, it's okay, like their anniversary reminders, that on the day that somebody passed away, or around the time, or around their birthdays, around the time that you lost a job, or you lost a pet, or you lost whatever you lost, around that time, that you can begin to feel, even though you've gotten to acceptance, you can begin to feel all of those things again. You can be angry again, or you can begin to just wonder and miss that thing again, or that person again. And that's absolutely okay for you to feel that way. The point is to create a space, a safe space for it to go to, not necessarily just stuffing it. But when that happens, remembering, hey, like this person was absolutely important to me, and it's okay to it's okay for me to take the time today to reflect on them. And with grief, eventually, sometimes, like when people when my clients are dealing with grief, I tend to just have them create a ritual or something that they can keep the person in memory. They can keep the person in their memory, and basically just continue to, so that they could continue on with their life. Some people have started charities for their loved ones. Some people have just gotten together every anniversary of the death or of the loss and done something. Some people have, like, whatever that looks like for you, whatever you want it to be, just create that for yourself so that you can be able to just allow yourself to move forward from the loss. And that is all I have. If you guys have questions on Facebook or Instagram, or if you want to share about your own grief, you can just share those with me in the comments. Or if you have questions, you can put them in the right place on Facebook and Instagram, and I will answer your questions. But these were the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I hope this was helpful to you guys. And if you don't have questions, that will be all.